Hi, everyone. This is Jon Bernys talking to you all, and I am just here today to talk in detail about my new musical composition, my phase composition, titled Sin That Dwells in Me. So, as I've written in the description, this is one of the most personal projects I have ever made. It's about a very personal, very delicate topic, very delicate struggle that I have been dealing with for my entire life, which is this thing called executive dysfunction. I am formally diagnosed with ADHD, and I am on the spectrum. But I try not to let that define who I am or defy who I am. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So, executive dysfunction has been something I'm struggling with, and that is a Mona Lisa of an understatement. It has ravaged me in waves throughout my life, and it has been far and away the most difficult war, internal or external, that I have ever tried to overcome. I have never worked on anything in my entire lifetime, and I've fought through quite a lot. I've never worked on anything in my life for years at a time without making any progress. Even some of the most difficult things I've done, I was able to take care of within a year or two. Like being laid off from work was a hard one, but got that sorted out. Learning to manage, the the whole autism thing, not letting that wreak havoc, and that was a lot easier than this. Financial hardships were easier to recover from than this. I mean, hell, my career has been easier than this. I do goddamn poetry for a living, basically. On top of working a day job, I almost consider it a curse from time to time about being passionate about poetry, because poetry is so hilariously difficult to monetize, virtually impossible to make a living off of. Even historically, people haven't really made a living off of poetry in and of itself. But that has been easier than this. It's been easier. I'm having a more swimmingly time furthering my career in poetry than managing the executive dysfunction that comes with ADHD. And of course, the normal stuff that people recommend has helped a little. Medication helps a little. Therapy helped a little. But it's a very primal part of who I am. I was born with it, and in all likelihood, I will die with it. So with this struggle that's been constant in my life for such a long time, I've always wanted to do something artistic about it, but none of the ideas for the past couple of years have really had any juice to it to me. So it was just none of the ideas that I had at first I think would work. And that's part of my artistic philosophy. If I have even a single doubt about a project, I'm not going to start it. I don't start a project unless I have no doubts about it in advance. And just none of my ideas were working. And oh yeah, a very important side note is kind of relevant to the fact that this composition does have religious undertones to it. I actually was kind of convinced that I was possessed, because why am I doing things? why am I spending so much of my life doing what I know I shouldn't be doing? And why am I spending so much of my life not doing what I should be doing? And no matter what, I could not command myself out of that situation. And so there was a time where I really was considering doing an exorcism or something like that. Sad but true. Um, I don't know where I was before I talked about that part, but so and then yeah, so none of the ideas worked at first. Um, and then it's just been a waiting game, and I still do read a Bible from time to time, and I emphasized when I released this project, and I will emphasize again, I am not a devout Christian. I'm highly spiritual, but I find it impossible to subscribe to any branch of Christianity due to, obviously how much horrible stuff they have committed historically. And all the constant, endless, just infinite hypocrisy. And but I came across the text, which is the skeleton of this composition, which is the text of Romans 7:15 through 20, written by Paul the Apostle. And very intentionally, I performed the New American translation, which is far and away my favorite Bible translation. It's so easy to understand that it's difficult not to understand it. And you can't say that about a lot of translations of the Bible. And then I did the classic stuff that I usually do, which is the Steve Reich style phase shifting, looping it, cutting the time of the loop for each one I add, and therefore bringing it to life, making it dance around itself. And then and obviously, as if you listen to it, the sound gets a lot more dark and horrible and intense as it goes on. I was originally considering adding distortion as an effect, but then I realized there's an effect I've been doing that is kind of unrealized, that I don't see anyone else doing, which is doing a reverse shimmer reverb. So the shimmer reverb is that very starry, galactic kind of sound, but I reverse it. I make it an octave lower than the notes I'm playing rather than an octave higher. So it creates this opposite heavenly effect. Instead of sounding heavenly, wow, why am I struggling? Instead of sounding heavenly, it sounds very chthonic, very abyssal, nocturnal, very dark, very eerie. So that was the effect I stuck with, because I don't see anyone else doing it, so I think it's kind of an unrealized potential in music. So, and then lastly, I added some heavy screaming at the end. That also gets more and more intense as the song goes on. So it's a very, very terrible sort of cacophony at the end of the song. And the gradual developmental nature of it is highly intentional too, which is just meant to symbolize, using music, using sound, using composition, what is the sonic, the aural manifestation of descending into hell, being gripped by your sin, and as a result, you're descending into hell. So I wanted to make a sound equivalent to that, and that organically, and it happened the other way around. It was not originally part of my plan to do this, but as it was the other way around, as me working on this project went on, that idea happened. So sort of like the opposite of using a storyboard. So it was just unscripted. And that's sort of just the whole story about how I composed it, how I wrote it, and everything. It's an incredibly simple, very minimalistic piece, and If anybody out there still has tips, um, hacks, um, insights on executive dysfunction and how to cope with it, I am still worlds, planets, galaxies, local groups away from figuring it out and learning to solve it and manage it effectively. So that is a very brief rundown of my newest composition titled Sin That Dwells in Me. You can check it out on Bandcamp and YouTube under my, and because of the very personal, very vulnerable nature of it, I have decided to release it under my legal name. So that's really about it. That's all I have to say about it for now. This has been Jon Bernys, and thank you so much for watching. Bye-bye.